Donal Hanley is my name, and I'm here today. First of all, thank you all for coming. I'm here to give you a talk today in relation to AirGrid and the opportunities for large sized companies in relation to getting cash back from the National Grid through various schemes. First of all, I'd just like to get acquainted with some of you because we can send you out some information after this. So I'm going to just send around just a questionnaire, your name and company and your job title and email, so we can get you at a later stage first of all. Just in relation to our own company, just a little bit of information on ourselves. We're a leading provider of smart grid technology both here in the UK. We do an awful lot more than demand response. We're also frequency response aggregators in the UK. Between Ireland and the UK, we probably have about 50 megawatts of energy. We've about 30 people employed in the company. Outside of demand frequency response, we also do a lot in relation to the whole area of load shifting and smart grid technology, meter and monitoring, and also we do a lot in the areas of OEE, operation effective efficiency and so forth. Some of the companies that we work with, Dublin Airport, we work with Cuisine de France. We do a lot of work we do in the actual food sector. We probably have 75% of all the cold stores in Ireland. Some of the leading food manufacturers we would have on board would be ABP, Rostera, Keypack, Dawn Meats. So we have a very broad knowledge of the whole area of food and refrigeration. The other areas that we actually home into and the other companies would be mills, retail, metals, airports, as I've mentioned already, and also a lot of the whole area of pharmaceutical and manufacturing, because the OEE is becoming hugely important to larger industries. We've offices in Dublin and City West here, we're very local. We've offices in Cork, where a lot of our companies, it's very much based about R&D, research and development, and actually where the actual markets are actually going. And coming from the UK, we believe that it's going to be mirrored over here in relation to system services, in relation to what's coming down the track with the National Grid, and over in the UK the payments are very, very high for frequency response. It hasn't happened in Ireland yet, but we personally believe ourselves that it will at some stage before the end. Well, it's been said to be rolled out in October of this year. So we're the only company in Ireland that's actually doing frequency response in the UK. It's not here in Ireland, so what we'll be doing is just mirroring those opportunities over here, depending on what's happening with AirGrid down the line. So what can we do here in Ireland? We look after peak charges avoidance, which would include load shifting. So a good example of that is a cold store. If there's peaks on your tariff, if you're on a day-ahead tariff, a slot tariff, or crude pass-through tariff, we can actually work with the equipment that's in these organisations and actually control the knock and pull them down against the actual day-ahead tariff. So you can't control every asset, but you control assets that can be controlled. And obviously if you can do that on a daily basis or a regular basis each day, 365 days a year, it becomes very, very valuable to the client. We also look at the whole area of OEE. We do a lot of work there for food companies such as Cuisine de France, Brady's Ham, and in the food sector in general. What's available in Ireland at the moment is demand response. So you've got, how demand response works is very, very simple. There's a revenue scheme from demand response. So demand response, basically, if you have a generation on site that can carry a load, or you can actually turn it down. Cold stores, as I said, are a very good example of that without losing temperature. Demand response works, basically you get 1 hour to 24 hours notice, and you come off the grid for 2 hours, and you get a capacity payment of €55,000 per megawatt. Now, as I said, we believe that there's going to be a big change in the National Grid on this, because the big factor in Ireland is the amount of renewable that's gone into the grid, and that's in the form of wind, as you probably well know. And I think it's by the year 2025, they're hoping that 75% of the capacity in the grid will be coming from wind generation and renewable. So the areas again is revenue schemes to the various system services. of peak avoidance, OEE, metering and monitoring, and all that area. So I'll skip to this 40% of energy needs at the moment, but 40% of the grid at the moment is made up of renewable energy, which is actually wind. So realistically, on demand response, the company is actually acting as a peaker plant. So instead of them turning on a peaker plant, which obviously isn't clean and sustainable, and probably now that we're looking at the whole area of global carbon emissions and the reduction of this, there's going to be a lot of constraints on Western countries and in Europe to perform and reduce their carbon emissions as a country. And Ireland will take precedence in this, because obviously, as I said, we're looking at 75% of our energy coming in Ireland coming from renewables, and a lot of that, as we know, is coming off wind at the moment, which is 40%. So the slides here that I've just gone on to will show you in the UK what actually happened is happening in mainland Britain at the moment. The whole focus in England at the moment is obviously grid balance, because their grids, we're only using 70% of our capacity in Ireland, which means we've 30% spare capacity. Now that means that in relation to demand response, for instance, we have companies that have been with us for 2 years in this, and have only had one call in the market, and they're getting a payment of 55,000 per megawatt for that privilege. Our equipment is universal as well in the whole area of frequency response. So it's a universal kit, so that, and because we have the R&D section, we've been researching this, we've helped the National Grid in England, and we solved a major problem for them. We believe that that's what's happened in the UK will be mirrored in Ireland down the line, and this is all going to be coming in as system services probably before the end of October of this year. The slide that I'm showing you here basically shows you in the UK what the size of the prize is. In the UK, the faster you can come off the grid, so if we've got hold of your assets and we can pull them down, because it's much quicker than turning on or turning off a generator at source, it's much more valuable to the UK. So the faster you can actually come off, the quicker or the more the payments have worked. You can see there, basically they go, today it's about 70,000 per megawatt, that's just for static frequency response, but by 2017 of next year, the size of the price for companies that can do this could be substantially very, very high, up to 140,000. It's worth noting, the great thing about this, there's no upfront cost to you, and the kit that we actually put in is the birth of a very good energy management project in relation to all the areas that I discussed, OEE, the whole area of metering and monitoring. If you're not using your generator and we're pulling down assets on your site, we have a visual on your site, so therefore we can actually use that to real-time information in reporting for you, metering, monitoring and all that area. The next slide is just how we automate sites. So we would, if it's not a generator, if it's a generator, it's very straightforward, obviously. What we do is we actually and we control it that way. We're also very big in the area of dashboarding, metering and monitoring, as I said. So all of this equipment will give you a very good visual on the actual site. So as you know, various constraints have a major effect on your sites. Weather is a huge constraint on sites, especially for the food manufacturing business and cold storage. Obviously, your tariffs are very, very important, and as we know, prices are very cheap right now at the moment, and we've seen that probably with Iran and the ban's been lifted there, that we're seeing a drop in again of 30 euros per barrel on oil prices, and that's obviously going to affect gas and electricity prices. So rather, if you're a fixed price customer, the problem with fixed pricing, I suppose, is there's a lot of volatility premiums in the price. It's an area that I've actually come from, because I used to work with Borgosh, but at the moment, the pass-through tariff, or obviously the start tariffs, about as tariffs to be on, because you're buying energy in real time and realistically cheaper prices. We've an operations centre that's 24/7. And it's 365-day metering and monitoring. We have alarms and events. So, for instance, for Dublin Airport, they were very interested in our technology because we look after the demand response project for them because we could give them alarms and trends and see how efficient their generators were working and so forth. And technology is very, very important to larger companies in relation to the information we provide. So it can be done manually or automated. We do have a few companies who prefer us just to put in our equipment. In relation to demand and frequency response, you have to put in a meter because you have to prove to EirGrid exactly what the load you're giving them, you said you're giving them, you are coming off the actual grid. So that's very important. So, as I said, all our areas, all our equipment is usually automated. I'd say 90% of our customers we automate everything for, and as I said, has another value as well in relation to future projects. Our goal as a company is to generate a revenue for you guys to actually, and I'd say probably 80% of the companies we're working with do a lot more than demand and frequency response. And the reason that is because we provide a platform to our customers that gives them, it's a one-stop shop and gives them a full array of products, which I've mentioned. OE is a great one for production companies. The whole area of metering and monitoring, the whole area of smart grid technology and so forth. Load shifting is very, very important. This is just a case study of what we actually do with the brake sites in the UK. We actually have them in Ireland as well. You can see this is actually the real cost of energy here. It's actually a day price of energy. And you can see the usage here before we actually come in and worked with brakes. And the problem was with brakes is that they were running their refrigeration, for instance, right through a peak. So we controlled it where we weren't affecting temperature, probably running a little bit higher where it's cheaper before a peak, and basically turning it down during the peaks, and you can obviously see the effects that would have on a daily basis for a company. This is the whole area here of OEE. This is the kind of stuff we've been doing for Brady's Ham and Cuisine de France up in Grange there beside us. It's very important for very large food companies on production to know, you know, are they running 24/7 if they're a 24/7 production company? And I think if you actually meter and monitor it correctly, in most cases a lot of these companies would only be doing 20 to 21 hours through stoppages, breakdown, people not going back from breaks and so forth. But we look at and that's very important, remember, because production means money, and if the more you can produce for the likes of Cuisine or any of these larger companies, obviously the more you can get out, you can put on the shelves, and the greater profit these companies can make. So we were looking at metering, temperature, sensors, humidity, stoppage time, stoppage tags, line speed, cycles, minutes, daily line performance reporting, analysis, and we also give, there's an example there with Cuisine, with Brady's of actually some of the dashboarding that we produce, so they can get a visual on temperatures, on production and so forth. We also look at the whole area of, we manage maximum demand, which is very, very important. We've had a lot of companies who saved a lot of money here for. Obviously, if that's controlled, if everything's going on at once, obviously your maximum demand is set at a level, it's going through the roof. So we actually can control that and save our customers money. If it's set too high and they're never reaching it, we can bring it down, and that's a big savings for larger companies especially. This again is some of the metering and monitoring of all the assets, and we compare energy analysis and reporting. We do a lot of work with multiple sites, obviously. Brakes would be one of the bigger ones that we have. We would have, I think, 60 sites of ours in the UK. Cuisine de France here optimising their production line in relation to the whole area of getting a visual on that, giving them metering and monitoring. Again, we're 365 days of the year metering and monitoring trends and analysis, and obviously all our controls as well are automated. And companies, especially larger companies like this, because especially for demand response or frequency response in the UK, if they're called outside of the markets, at least to know that we're monitoring it. And remember that equipment has a much bigger value to our customer than just demand and frequency response. The key areas here that I want to get across is first of all, it's generating a revenue for doing little or nothing. And remember that if you've got a generator on your site, for instance, it's always very good practice. You should be, for health and safety reasons anyways, you should be actually testing that against the load and its proper management standards. Number two, you're getting a payment to do that, and realistically, we've only had one call in the last 2 years. Number 3, we believe it's going into frequency response like it has in the UK, and that's where the real money, that's where we believe the big payments will be. We don't know what's happening at the moment with the National Grid. We're waiting for the regulator to bring out the prices of what that's going to be for FR. But remember, we're the only company between Ireland and England nobody's doing it in Ireland. We're doing it in the UK already, so we have that expertise. We've been 3 years developing this product as well, and we'll all be trying to put our companies that we're working with where the money is, so we'll be following basically where the higher payments are if they're available to do that. Also, the kit that we put in, as I said, it is multitask in relation to metering and monitoring, especially if we're turning down load. The whole area of efficiency, optimization and load shifting is becoming hugely important to companies like yourselves and the whole area of OE. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be welcome to take them. I think I've got a minute here. This is like doing a best man speech today for me, so I hope it's been okay. So any questions? If you can get my details, obviously on LinkedIn. Donal Hanley is my name if you want to get in contact with me. We'd be very, very happy to come out to your organisation, do a full presentation, maybe show you some more case studies with some of the bigger companies as well that we are actually working with. And thank you very, very much for your time. Cheers.